Hello everyone, I'm Professor Lu from Taiwan Tech BA Department. Today we are going to learn for loop. Although we already learned that when we learned flow control, so you probably still remember the for loop is actually very straightforward. You need to have a variable to help you control how many times you want to repeat in this loop. And usually the variable is from the sequence you put here. So maybe you put a string, a list, even a tuple or a file, or a range of numbers, something like that. And then the for loop will take one of the element in the sequence and one by one and use the variable in the statement you put in the for loop. And remember, the statement maybe have multiple lines, so you need to use an indent to help the program understand which lines or which content you want the for loop to repeat. Okay, so that's the basic concept. However, we also learn while loop, and I always remember, I will always remind you, you need to always think about it, which situation I want to use for loop, and which situation maybe use while loop will be better. But actually, in most of the case, you can either use for loop or while loop. But remember, for loop, it's very straightforward. You put a variable and you use the sequence to help you control how many times you want to repeat. However, in while loop, you need to define the variable outside the while loop, outside the loop, to define the variable and give an initial value. And then in the while loop, you need to tell the loop when you need to stop. So you may have a judgment to tell them the end condition, or maybe the um uh the the terminal condition to tell them when you should stop. And then in the loop, you need the mechanism to update the variable. So after a few times, the variable will meet the end condition and stop the loop. Otherwise, it's become an endless loop. But in for loop, usually we don't have that type of question. We won't have endless loop because whenever all the items in the sequence uh, be finished, we go to each of them, and after finish, the loop will stop automatically. Okay, let's take one example. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is one of my favorite comics book or anime. I don't know how to say that. Anime TV show. It's a very interesting story. And anyway, that's the title. So if you want to use a string as the sequence for using the for loop, then you put just the string, and maybe in the string we have multiple letters. The first one is J, second is O, something like that. But each of them may consider one item as the variable and put in the statement. So if you see the statement, it's very simple. We just print I and go with end with a space and keep in the same line, then repeat the for loop. So every time it will print out one letter and with a space. And second time it print O with a space, something like that, until all the item in the sequence be finished. So that's a process. And you may curiosity why we need the and equal to a space. If you take it out, you will see, okay, it looks like that. Every time we have one items as the variable be printed out, it will change line. So if you have a very long sentence, maybe it takes very many lines, and I don't like it. So I want them to put in one line. So I need to add this syntax to tell them after you print I, you put one space and then keep in the same line, and then print out the second content, something like that. That's the purpose I do this way. Okay, you can also put maybe a command. You can see. If you follow rule, you understand why it looks like that. And remember that even a space may consider as one item in a string and put in a variable to print out. Okay, so that's the rules. If you use string and combine with for loop, it will look like that. Okay, we move on. If we use list, and now each of the content or items you put in the list will be considered as one element and put as variable and to do the statement in the loop. So here we do the same thing. We just print out each of the item in the sequence. But now the sequence, we put one list in the sequence. If you're familiar with JoJo, you probably understand that's all the names of the main characters in each of the season. So season 1, the main character is Jonathan Joestar. Second is Joseph Joestar. Okay, if you're familiar with the story, you probably know all the main characters have a nickname, JoJo. So that's why the title of the story is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Also, Bizarre Adventure. Okay. Anyway, I always read the Mandarin version, so it's called JoJo 的奇妙冒险. Okay, so sometimes it's hard for me to pronounce the English title. Okay, anyway, now we have multiple JoJos, and we want to print out them one by one. So we do that, and you can see Jonathan Joestar as the first element, and print out and go with a comma and one space, then repeat the second main character, something like that. Similarly, if without this part, it will print out all of them. So it means we repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We repeat 8 times because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 because we have 8 items, so we print 8 times. Okay, I hope you understand this part. It's not difficult, supposed to be easy to know. Okay, then we move on. The second very easy to understand to use the for loop is to put a range. For example, I use the numbers to control how many times the for loop need to repeat. So for example, we have for I in range, I put a range of numbers. Okay, so maybe I first do that, then you will understand what happened. Remember, we already learned the index system. So the first 2 places you put the start point, and second is the end point. And remember, the end point won't be included. So if I put this way, it means I start from 1 and end by 20, but 20 will not be included. And if we put the third one, the third parameters will be the jump steps, or some people call it separate. It means every time when I go to next, I will jump 2 positions. So 1 jump 2 position become 3, jump 2 position become 5 until the end position 20. So it looks like that, right? And similarly, if I want them be printed in one line, I use the AND syntax. Okay, so we put together. That's also another way, very commonly used way to help you control the for loop. Okay, next one. I remember when I was a university student, sometimes I go out for party, and for example, we have some game. One of the game I remember clearly is we have all our friends and maybe sit in one circle, and everyone start. Each of the person need to like say one number, and we follow sequence, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But sometimes we get a little bit drunk, so we have some rules. For example, if a number can be fully divided by 3, you should skip it. So that means 1, 2, the third person should not say 3. Instead, it need to skip 3 and say 4, and then follow 5 and skip 6. Something like that. If a number can be fully divided by 3, you need to skip it. If you forget this one, you need to have one more shot. Something like that. And then not only fully divided by 3 because it's too easy. And then we have the second rule. If the number ends with 3, you also need to skip it. So we have the second rule. If the number ends with 3, then you also need to skip it. So have this experience. So I want to provide a program to use the for loop to help me do the judgment. So I combine the for loop with the if judgment condition to see if I can use the program to help me play the similar game. So I have two conditions. If the number can be fully divided by 3 or end with 3, then I do continue. I think in previous video, we already learned continue and also the break, right? So if you forget this part, you can go back to watch the previous video. Continue means basically we don't do the next syntax. So it means we don't do the print. Instead, we go back to the for loop. So that's the purpose of continue. So that also means if the condition meet, then we will go into the statement in the if. It's called continue. So we'll go out to next variable in the for loop, right? So if I equal to 3, then the first condition meet. So I go continue. So I go back to the for loop for the next value. Next value is 4. So I use 4 again and inside the statement. And because 4 cannot be fully divided by 3 or not end with 3, then I don't need to go inside the if statement. Instead, I will directly go to the print. So I print the number. Something like that, right? Okay, so it's a very commonly used sometimes, although the for loop, while loop, if else, all those things are simple. But when you combine them, it can be very useful to help you handle some complicated process. Okay, so some people may say, okay, for loop, while loop, it's kind of like simple. Yeah, to some part it's true, but actually, if you can combine them, actually you can do a lot of things. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Nested for loop. Nested for loop. Nested for loop basically it means you can combine multiple for loop. For example, the 9 times 9 multiplication table, 99乘法表, right? We already do that in while loop or even in the flow control classes. However, I want to repeat again. So the for loop means you have another for loop in your for loop. So first I have a for loop to control the A variable, and second the inside loop control B variable. So the outside loop is A, inside loop is B, and here I use the A variable times B variable and print out the result. So it's a very good part to get a 9 times 9 table or 99 table, okay? But you also can see here instead I directly put all the number maybe from 1 to 9 in the for loop syntax. Instead, I first create a variable we call numbers, and the numbers also use a for loop to create it. So that's also another way you may commonly see when you create a list, you directly use for loop to create a content. We already learned that from previous classes, right? So just to help you review this part. So after that, we have the numbers, and the numbers is actually the list, the content from 1 to 9. So we can use the 1 to 9 as the range to control our for loop. And we have two level for loops. The first one, the variable A, the range is from 1 to 9. The second one, B, also from 1 to 9. So after you combine them, it's become a 9 times 9 table. Okay. Okay, I just want to use this one to demonstrate the nested for loop, and also use the for loop to create content for your list. Okay. Okay, and another way. Okay, sorry, maybe I can clean it out to help you compare them. Okay, another way, if we want to do similar purpose, but another way is we can directly use range. Instead, create a variable to of as a list to put all content here. Another way is we directly use numbers, so we use range from 1 to 10, but 10 will not be included. So it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 until 9. So it's another way to write the 99 table, but I want to demonstrate to you. Sometimes you can directly use a range of data. I mean, keep all data here, right? That's the first way to help you control the for loop. And another way is to use the numbers from range and then put a range of number. That's also work. So that's the most commonly ways to use for loop. So the first one, and that's the second. Okay. Let's move on. I want to teach you another syntax I think is very useful, very powerful. It's called enumerate. Enumerate. So when you use a loop, sometimes you want to give them index. To give them index. For example, we go back to the JoJo's name. So we have 8 names of the main character in the 8 seasons of JoJo story. Okay, so we first create a list. I call it A and have the 8 names. And when you use the enumerate, you put maybe the list here as the iterable. I don't know how to pronounce. Usually I call iteration, so it's iterable. Iterable. Okay, anyway, it means the things you want to repeat in your loop. And the second, provide the start index. So maybe you can start from 0, but I like to use enumerate because in most of the case, in normal situation, we like to provide the index start from 1. So that's why the enumerate is sometimes very useful. So for example, now I create a list. I call it A. So that's the items I want to give the index. So I have a list I put here, and I use the enumerate to give them all the name index from, and the index start from 1. So Jonathan will be 1, Joseph will be 2, and so on until 8. So after that, you can see in this enumerate, I have the content, and I have the content also have the index. But now I use the for loop to combine with this one. That will become in the enumerate, the first I means the index, and the JoJo means each of the iterable items I put here. So that means the first time the I equal to 1, and the JoJo's will be the first item here, so which is Jonathan Joestar. And second time, I become 2, and the JoJo's become the Joseph Joestar. So you can see when I print out, it looks like that. So another very important syntax in the for loop, and enumerate, very powerful. And remember, if you use enumerate combined with for, it may look like that. I is the index. JoJo's is the item you take from this position. For example, this list. It means like the variable inside the A. So every time the JoJo's will be different. Okay. And this part, you put the star number. So maybe you can start from 10. That also work. So if I do that, if I run this code, you will see maybe start from 10 and then Jonathan Joseph, then 11 Joseph Josta, something like that, right? Okay. So I do that because the JoJo stories from the first season, second season, so I want to use enumerate to give them the season number. Okay. So that's the enumerate, very commonly used to combine with for loop. Sorry, because I found I have a terrible pronunciation of this word. So I use the Google Translate to maybe provide a better pronunciation to help you understand how to say it.
Iterable.
Iterable, okay? Okay, so enumerate, iterable. So you combine with iterable and the star number to run the enumerate syntax. Okay, let's move on. In this video, the latest part, I want to provide you an exercise. And this exercise called finding prime numbers. So I know in your file, maybe you already have the content. Maybe you can take it out and first try to write by yourself. Okay, in this exercise, we need to do two things. First of all, we need to figure it out how many prime numbers are between 2 and 100. And what is the 6 prime numbers in the list? Okay, so first of all, if you don't know what is prime numbers, you can Google it. You suppose can find the definition. It means natural numbers that are divisible by only one and the number itself. So for example, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 13, and so on. So in Chinese, we call it 直数, 直数, okay? So after you understand it, so maybe you can stop here, try to write by yourself. Okay, if I assume you already stop and try to do it by yourself, no matter you can successful write a program or not, it doesn't matter. Instead, I hope you have the chance to first challenge yourself and then come back to compare with my answer. Okay, and also I want to remind you, there's no standard answer. So even the way you write this exercise very different to mine, that's okay, no problem. I just provide one possible solution to you. Okay, so in my solution, I first want to create a list called primes. So it's an empty list. And then based on the definition, I know if I want to check the number from 2 to 100, one most easy way is to take them one by one and divide it by any number smaller than the number. So the outside loop, I have the variable I in a range from 2 to 100. So I take the I, each of the I, to divide it by all the possible number smaller than I. Then I can see if it's a prime number, right? Okay, so after you understand that, okay, I first maybe you can skip the flag here. I want to first explain the inside loop. So the inside loop also very straightforward. I want to compare all the numbers smaller than I, right? And I use those range, use the variable j to represent all the numbers between 2 and I. Then I use I divided by j to see if it's the remainder equal to 0. That means I can be fully divided by j, that also means I is not a prime number. Okay, if you understand this part, then we go back a little bit. Because the I will be divided by a lot of different numbers, right? A lot of different numbers that's smaller than j, right? So if the I can be fully divided by any of the number j, then I say it's not a flag. But it's very hard to do that, okay? Because what I need to keep is if any of the numbers prime number I want to add into the prime list. So what I did here is I used a flag, and the flag, whenever you have a new value of I, the flag will be raised up like a flag equal to 1. But whenever I found I can be fully divided by smaller number and I let the flag fall down, that also represent it's not prime number. So the purpose here is if the I can fully divided by j, then you can see the statement inside the if is the flag equal to 0. So that means the flag down and I break it. So the break is actually to help you stop the inside loop. That means although maybe I still have other values smaller than I can be used as j, but I don't want to waste my time because my purpose is to find the first j can I can be fully divided by the j. So once my purpose fulfilled, I can break here. I don't need to waste my time. And after the for loop, the inside for loop, the outside for loop still have one part. It's to help you check. One situation is the inside for loop is be breaked. However, another situation is go through all the possible value for j, still the flag equal to 1. I mean, all the if situation won't be true, so the flag is still be 1. In that situation, I know the I is a prime number. So in that situation, I need add the I into my prime list. Okay, so that's the way I can find all the prime number between 2 and 100. So after you understand this part, we can directly answer the first question. So I want to know how many prime numbers are between 2 and 100. So I need to print out the length of the prime list, right? So I can say in total I have 25. If I am not sure if it's true, if it's correct, maybe I can show all the prime numbers. So in that case, maybe I can directly type the list name and to see the content inside it. So 2, 3, 5, 6, 11. Okay, yeah, I think it's correct. That's all the prime numbers I have between 2 and 100. Then we go back again. The second question, what is the sixth prime number? Okay, so one more simple way is I can count. So from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so 16 is supposed to be 53. So to find it out, what I can do, actually, I can use the list name to provide the index. Okay, what should I put? 6? 16? Okay, 16. You can see it's not 53. We already know the answer is supposed to be 53. Remember that in the list, it's always start from, the index always start from 0. So if I want to find a 6, actually I should put 15. If I want to find a 16, I suppose put 15. Okay, sorry, I think I pronounced some number wrong. Okay, so but anyway, I hope you understand. If you want to find the 16th prime number, actually you should put the index as 15 here. Okay, if you understand this part, okay. Yeah. Okay, here I want to use the enumerate again to help you to do similar things. Okay, so that's also another way to help you find, for example, next time if you want to know what is the 18 prime number in the list, if you use enumerate, that's also a very straightforward way. So you understand the first prime number 2, so the 18th prime number is 61, something like that. Okay. Yeah, that's all the content I want to share with you. And remember that the finding prime numbers actually a little bit challenging. So if you understand, even you understand what I write here, after you understand it, I still encourage you to delete all of them and write by yourself to make sure without those hints, you still can finish by yourself. Okay, so even you understand this part, if you cannot write by yourself in the very beginning by yourself, even you understand the explanation by me, I still hope you can delete all of them and try to write by yourself again. That's the best way for your learning. Okay, so that's all the content I want to share with you. I designed a lot of interesting practices in our physical class for questions. If you are interested, maybe you can first study by yourself. But anyway, that's all the content I will put in our physical class. Hope you enjoy that. See you next time. Bye bye.